Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi Achins. As you can see, I have with me Lieutenant General Satish Dua, someone who's got his hand on the pulse of Kashmir. As a matter of fact, I've been trying to get this conversation with him for quite a while, but we kind of delayed this because I realized he was actually going to Kashmir. There's no better to get a ground feel when you've actually been there, and from someone who's actually been the Corps Commander 15 Corps in that region, handled that place during the worst of its times, if I may. It'll be much more interesting for us to get what is happening on the ground from General Dua. Sir, thank you so much for taking time out this afternoon to speak to me and
Thank
to
you.
give
Thank
your
you, Adi,
views about
for inviting
what's
me.
happening. So, sir, as I was saying, you just come back, and I believe you were just telling me you're going again. So, the Kashmir has been a part of your itinerary for some time. How do you see, the mood on the ground? Of course, we can read, we can see news, but somebody who's been there, somebody who served there, somebody who knows the people, what are the people saying today after almost, the long time that has passed after 5th of August 2019?
Um, Thank you, Adi, for inviting me. And it's a topic after my heart. Uh, I've been there recently to attend our regimental reunion. But you always get a sense. I met people, the lower strata of society. I met people in official positions at the higher strata of society, both Kashmiri Muslims as well as the Hindus who still do business over there. Uh, the more interesting part is that in our regimental reunion, Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry Center, we also meet all the multitude of retired, the veteran soldiers of Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry. They belong to JNK. They come from villages of Kashmir. When you talk to them, you really get a good sense, and they are not indoctrinated, they are not radicalized, so you really get a very objective sense of feel of the place after talking to them. So to your question, what is the sense of the or what is the mood there? I think this is to be seen at two levels. Firstly, as I got out, talked to the taxi wala. When you talk to him, they are the taxi wala, the sumo wala, the shikara wala, the porter, the ponies. They are so happy that tourists are flocking to Kashmir.
Mm.
You know, earlier when there was always these incidents of violence here and there that would come out in the media and the news, people would ask me, friends or acquaintances would ask me, is it safe to go to Kashmir? And I would always assure them, no, it's safe, because the incidents that you read about are not happening at the places that tourists frequent. They're happening elsewhere. They're happening either in the countryside or in some small towns, not in Dal Lake or in Shankaracharya Temple. So, having said this, um, today uh, a large percentage of population uh, lives by tourism. I mean, the source of livelihood is either directly or indirectly connected with tourism, and they are very happy. I think we've broken all records of
Mm.
tourist inflow this summer and counting, because nowadays even winter tourism takes off very well. Having said that, no, that's where people are happy. When I ask the others as to how is the administration under the direct rule by the center through a lieutenant governor forming, they are very happy with the fact that there is an outreach, there is administration works. People, there are no disruptions in schools. People are coming to the primary health centers, so things are moving in a positive side. But that is not to say that there is no resentment. There is resentment. When you ask, uh, whether young to middle-aged people, uh, so what is your feeling about this? You say, "ये अच्छा नहीं हुआ." All they can say, "ये अच्छा नहीं हुआ." I think first they feel cheated about the fact that there was not too much not there was no consultation. It was an abrupt announcement when Article 370 was abrogated. Second, the division of state into two union territories is something that they find it very hard to swallow. Uh, when I ask them what difference does it make to their daily lives, they are unable to answer. But then that resentment remains; it lurks beneath the surface. And the last point in this, however, the the optimism of day-to-day life being near normal, because you see, when I was co-commander 5 6 years ago, we all know there was violence in the countryside with the terrorist violence. There was there was violence in the street. There were stone pelters. There was a calendar of Bands and Hartals issued by the Hurriyat, and a common man would hardly find any days when he could go to market for shopping. I mean, apart from daily needs, you could not go to the main markets. So life was very disrupted. Life was very uncertain. There nothing was predictable. To that extent, everyone lives. I mean, you breathe in an easy atmosphere today. So that's the sense I get.
I get your point. So you're not saying it's normal, but you're saying normalcy is kind of seeping in, and that's something which is interesting when we see the news of movie theaters and stuff like that coming in. So that's getting to normal life. I mean, people might just think a movie theater is a very small thing, but
If Adi, if I'll interrupt. So, if when you start
sir,
talking of such indicators, multiplexes being opened, food outlets, KFC, etc., all making an entrance. More important than that is things that hold sentiment. There is a different kind of a sentiment when the Tiranga, the tricolor flies aloft on Lal Chowk, when Jangan Man is sung at many places, when musical concerts and events are being planned on Dal Lake and other prominent places, when you see people coming out and speaking openly of the idea of India. I am not saying everyone is doing that, but there are so many of them who found it difficult to express themselves publicly today are bold enough to do that. The Hurriyat has been totally marginalized. The separatist angle is almost gone. I mean, they are either behind bars or they're certainly not affecting the daily lives. The terrorists, I don't know if you want to discuss this. So if you permit, I will. The terrorists are not happy with this. The other side and the handlers across are certainly not happy with this. So what do they do? They are, whenever things start appearing too normal, whenever there is khushali and happiness, um, you see, off late we've been seeing those targeted killings, soft targets, picking on a chemist somewhere, picking on a policeman on leave at home, and he's being shot, or non-resident migrant labor being shot. This is to instill, I mean, if everyone starts getting too much of a feel good factor, this is to instill that fear back in them. And to do that, their cadres are limited, because now the number of terrorists, which used to be about 200 plus minus plus, in fact, when I was a corps commander, today hovers around 100 plus minus plus. So when the numbers are down and they are unable to exfiltrate for training, they are unable to infiltrate weapons. The numbers that are there, their recruitment is falling, and those that are there are not trained at all, because there is no possibility of training today. So they've embarked on this new thing of hybrid terrorists. I'll take a minute to explain what a hybrid terrorist
please,
is.
sir, please, sir.
A hybrid terrorist is one that is drawn from the society. He is not well trained. You know, to fire a AK rifle, it requires training, a Kalashnikov. But to fire a pistol, it doesn't require too much of a training. To lob a hand grenade, it doesn't require too much of a training. Watching movies and reading things on the internet is good enough. And when you're not looking at shooting at a range, if those two men walked into a chemist's shop and picked up a pistol, whipped out a pistol and shot him in his chest from a point blank close range, it didn't require too much of training. Thereafter,
True.
he just, what a hybrid terrorist does. Thereafter, he tosses the weapon, goes back into the society, and starts leading a normal life. He does not attempt a second terrorist act of violence. So that makes it very difficult he's not difficult to catch, difficult for the security forces to nab, and the earlier vis-a-vis the earlier terrorists who lived amongst terrorists, who carried out acts of violence one after the other, left a signature somewhere that could be corroborated by others, and things like that. So this is the new tactic that is being employed uh, by the by their handlers, so so to ensure that that feeling of normalcy does not set in so easily, or whenever it does, they unsettle that
Yes,
feeling.
something.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about this. This whole killing of the DG, the injuring of a CRPF personnel. We for the past 6 months we saw attacks on civilians uh, to probably send a message to a particular segment of the population, which was not the forefront segment. These are small workers. I mean, they were daily sort of hand to mouth people. Uh, that to me has a different target audience, different impact. Now, coming back to this high level security agency hits, is there a weavering strategy in this targeted killings, or is this something that they're just doing because they have to keep this fear up?
Um, I think it isn't a big great strategy. Essentially, it is born out of the same desire to scuttle that feeling of normalcy, that feel good factor.
Mm-hmm.
And in so doing, it is difficult to attack security forces. It is hard to find targets of importance or target VIPs. It is easier to target the common defenseless man. And it instills a bigger sense of insecurity, because the common man starts feeling threatened. Earlier, the attacks would take place in positions of authority, in symbols of authority. A vehicle, government vehicle, would be burned. Police convoy stone pelting was done on a police convoy or an
Mm.
army convoy. Um so what I'm trying to say today, a defenseless common civilian in common walks of life in villages and towns starts feeling insecure. So that their intended aim is achieved, of scuttling that feeling of normalcy, as we would call it. Uh, so I think that is the intended strategy.
So the second big worry that I'd like to talk to you about is narcotics. With the kind of utilization of these drones that the Pakistanis are up to, uh, we see Kashmir. You know, a lot of reports now talk about the spread of these drugs into the society as far as it has gone in Punjab. We know we have a big problem in Punjab, and it's wasting a certain segment of the youth. How significant do you see this whole narco terrorism coming up? Because at the end of it, this is also a source of raising money. Um, how do you see this whole situation, sir?
You are right. Let me say something that I should be saying at the end of it, but let me start with that. I think if the last decade was more about ideological radicalization, this decade is more about this narco terrorism. We'll have to actually grapple with this in a big way. And like you pointed out, otherwise, like Punjab, we will go the Punjab way. They're changing their tactics all the time. We need to evolve. Um, Narco terrorism is an age-old phenomena. It finances terrorism, and as also is the substance used by the youth.
Hmm.
But apart from just the narco terrorism, there is another issue that very little few people speak about, and that is the the ganja that is grown in Kashmir itself. Somehow, that is a topic that is often not touched. I wonder why. The the industry there rivals the apple industry in the valley, and that's really huge. This is something that I think needs to be tackled by the security forces, more by the state police and intelligence agencies, because this is the next powder keg waiting to explode.
That region actually grows it naturally, so it's even more a difficult challenge to
Yes.
control, sir. Indeed. So, we see Pakistan today in a situation where they're struggling within themselves, and they are also on the teetering edge of this FATF blacklist, grey list, and it just keeps going up and down. It's something to happen in October. Keeping all that aside, the kind of ready money that the Pakistanis would have to invest into something like this, and you brought it out that these are not very highly trained individuals carrying out attacks. That tells you that the amount of effort and training is going into these guys is much lesser. The whole game is being played differently. How do you see the Pakistanis now adapting to this new normal with, I mean, we'll talk about the politics and the statehood and all that later on, but how do you see Pakistan adapting to this normalcy as we discussed in the particular state? I'd like to ask you this, and secondly, the evolution of these secular name changes of these organizations, the resistance front, and the so on and so forth. They're trying to be given a more secular sort of a outlook by the Pakistanis. How do you see this whole Pakistan angle going forward, sir?
So let me take the second part first, Adi. The name changes, the TRF, PAFF, the Resistance Front, for instance. Let me just take one name. What is Resistance Front? It is actually a repackaged LET. Why the name change? Because firstly, organizations, terrorist organizations like LET, JEM, Jaish-e Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba are banned outfits. The Resistance Front is a new organization. It has two advantages. One, it is a more acceptable name. It is not a radical fundamentalistic name. The Resistance Front. It could have been in any capital of the world,
Marketing.
and
Hmm.
it has when anyone in the Western countries hears of Resistance Front, he it is a very milder hue.
Yeah.
It is it will find easy acceptance in the Western capitals, and that's what they want. And the second part is that it has a stronger online presence. It helps them escape, or it's an escape valve against the FATF sanctions and such like mechanisms. Because for TRF to be an outlawed terrorist organization, it is going to take us 10 years, if at all. So, till the name, the lexicon does not find its way in the list, they are safe. So that is the reason for repackaging this, and like I mentioned today, online, taking a leaf from the ISIS, all these terrorist organizations, the newer versions and the younger generation is going more and more online as well. So that is now to the first part of your question about Pakistan being in a bad spot itself. You are right. Pakistan is in a bad place politically, diplomatically, economically, and if we feel that it's for that reason, Pakistan will stop funding or will have to reduce its
Hmm.
funds towards this uh, proxy war by terrorism. I don't think that is possible. I don't think that will be the case. For Let me explain why. While they are unable to infiltrate their terrorists as they did earlier from across the line of control because of a very robust anti-infiltration grid, but as to sending the funding across, sending the ideas across, today communications are seamless. As to their access to funds, Pakistan politically is in a bad space, economically is in a bad space. The Pakistan military is the only stable instrument there. And in fact, recently, the chief has visited the US. There,
Hmm.
that's the only pillar of the government that others are engaging with. So Pakistan military is and Pakistan, it is the Pakistan military that is funding and masterminding this proxy war across the LOC. So I don't think there would be any or much material difference. It would not make much material difference to the proxy war that Pakistan military is waging against India in Kashmir.
I think you've brought out a very simple argument with regards to Kashmir, because it's something will be very difficult to sell within Pakistan if they just let it go. So finally, I come to what we can do, and we see the Home Minister recently visiting Kashmir. There are certain rallies which are supposed to happen. There's youth interactions. There's inaugurations of certain things, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of ton of money which is going inside abroad. Countries are getting into Kashmir area and trying to revive the economy there. There's a lot of infrastructure development which is in progress, aims and this and that and the other. Having said that, there is those are the positives. One of the biggest criticisms of the way this whole thing is being handled is that India's gone and delayed the statehood, or delayed the implementation of the statehood after the delimitation exercise and so on and so forth. Would you one agree to that? And two, what would be your sort of a thought process in terms of a timeline for this whole thing to move forward, sir?
So my counter question to you would be, first, delayed as against what? Are they
Indeed.
common perceptions or the expectations? Firstly, there are no precedences. This is a one-off situation. So delayed against what is your barometer? If it is against expectations, then we must also remember that it is a very complex situation. So I'm no expert in the political science, but I mean, I feel that normal steps are being taken that are required as a run up to the political process. Delimitation has been completed. There are prickly issues, but delimitation has been completed. Next, today, I think it was today only in Baramulla that the Home Minister has announced in a public rally that the political process will take place when the electoral rolls are completed, and electoral rolls are
Almost
nearing
done.
their
Mm,
completion.
mm,
So
mm,
they're yet to be sort of concluded. I think this visit, more than anything else, is a clear admission of government's, in fact, an announcement of government's will to start the process, the political process soon, statehood. Now, to my way of looking at things, again with a disclaimer that I'm no expert in this field, but to my way of looking at things, uh, statehood without the political process would not be appropriate. I mean, let's say we were to have the statehood first, and then the
begin the whole
what
politics,
do
yeah.
we do?
Mm,
Does the lieutenant governor govern it, or we post a governor? How do we do the whole thing? It
mm,
becomes a little more complicated. So I think it would happen the other way around. We'll perhaps have the political process go first, uh, and the statehood follows, which has been said, which has been announced, or has been this has been admitted by the government, by the Home Minister several times, that the statehood will follow if things go right and
mm,
things
mm.
overall are going right. Or at best, they might go hand in hand, the political process and the statehood. So, to my way of looking at things, we needed to stabilize things first. Okay, the last point I'd like to make in this, if there are if it has been delayed by some expectations from some quarters, and a lot of quarters, or maybe whatever you and I also expected will happen after August 19, I think we must also remember that for 2 years the whole world was stuck by a
Mm,
pandemic. The
true.
whole way of life, the way of doing business, the way of doing economy, the way of work from home, so many things changed, and much progress could not be made in those 2 years. So I'm sure that if that had not happened when it happened, this process also would have been hastened. So I hold a lot of hope in the way this process is sort of unfolding.
Thank you, sir, for setting the record straight as far as that is concerned, because that's probably the only criticism that is heard in many a circle around the discussion of Kashmir. That yaar late ho gaya ye abhi, election hona chahiye, statehood hona
But
chahiye, and I think
COVID
the way
भी
that
COVID भी हो गया, so I mean we must
COVID
also
bhi
give
ho gaya,
account of all that.
but I think the way that you put it across is a very good perspective to look at, is because what is the precedence of an action like this? There is no precedence. So how are you saying that this thing is delayed? Um, it's not an easy place to get into. You still have certain specks of violence and narco terrorism and whole lot of other things, and a neighbor does not help in that particular aspect. So I think what you put it across makes a lot of sense, and I think that needs to be recognized a little more. Sir, thank you so much for your opinion, the time that you've taken out, and of course, the understanding and sharing with us the understanding of Kashmir that you've garnered over years of experience, and that's something that I'd like to kind of keep on revisiting, because October is the month of Kashmir, if I may. It was the month of October when the Maharaja had also signed the Treaty of Accession, and the whole story of Kashmir started up in October 1947. So this is the time that one must revisit and try and learn and try and see what we can do. In that aspect, sir, thank you so much once again for joining me, and looking forward to many more interactions on this and many other subjects. Till then, sir.
Thank you.
Jai Hind.
Thank you, Adi, and it's been a pleasure talking to you as always. And may things turn for better in Kashmir soon. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir.